Discerning truth in a sea of lies. Live from Kalispell, Montana, it's Critical Disclosure Radio with your host, Jim White.
Okay, I'm your host, James White. This is Critical Disclosure Radio. Thanks so much for joining me here today on this 9th day of March 2022. And we are coming to you live here from Kalispell, Montana on a, thankfully, a sunny day. It looks like it's going to be warming up here. It's going to be 50 degrees by the weekend. It was snowing here a couple of days ago, but that's Montana. If that surprises you, you haven't been paying attention because that's pretty common around here. We do appreciate you joining us today. We are waiting on Richard Mack. Sheriff Richard Mack should be joining us here shortly here on the broadcast, and we're delighted to have Richard here with us today. He, of course, is the founder and director, president of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and been a frequent guest on the broadcast. He actually has a show, I believe, on Brighteon TV. That's the companion to Brighteon Radio and the Brighteon website. I believe he's on a couple days, one day a week, as a matter of fact. And we're delighted to have him here today with us on the program. We are expecting him here, I guess, anytime. I'm expecting him to log on any minute here, and we'll have him on the broadcast. If he doesn't show up, which I don't think he's ever stood me up before. I have had guests that have done that, but I don't think Sheriff Mack's one of them that has. But if he doesn't, we'll just have to roll through it, I guess, and cover some news and talk about some things, which I don't have prepared at this point, of course. But this wouldn't be the first time. Let me make sure that we got the volume up here and everything's going well. Sometimes this volume wigs out on me, so let me make sure. Thanks, appreciate your patience. This thing's been giving me a hard time recently, but nope, here it is. We're good to go. That looks good, and looks like we're going out properly on all different networks. Let me refresh this. And there, Sheriff Mack is here with us now, and we'll let Sheriff Mack in here right away. There we go. Let's bring him on in. And Sheriff Richard Mack is joining us now. He's logging in as we speak. And we expect to have him on here in just a second. There he is. My good friend Richard Mack, Sheriff Mack. Thanks so much for joining us here. Always great to see you. I just gave you a brief interview before you came on the broadcast. The founder and director of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. Been a many-time guest on this broadcast. Was here in Kalispell over the summertime. It was great to spend some time with him. We got a nice photo that I put out there on my social media with he and I and Randy Weaver. There, it was a great time to have you in town. And boy, I tell you, first of all, Sheriff, thanks so much for joining us here today on the broadcast here on Brighteon Radio. I know you have your own Brighteon TV station show. I think you do it once a week. And Mike Adams and Natural News and those guys over there at Brighteon have done some great work putting together all these different networks, the social networks, the TV networks, the video networks, and now the radio network. I take my hats off to them for what they've done. But before I do that, I want to take my hat off to you, Sheriff, for all the great work you've done, and thanks for being here today.
Well, Jim, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, and always a pleasure to be on any network that's outside mainstream. I can tell you honestly, I've pretty much given up anything to do with Twitter or Facebook. And I think Trump would have been better off if he had done that a lot sooner, too.
Yeah, no kidding. He's coming up with his own Truth Social network. I don't know how well that's going to do, but there's other networks out there, of course, like we mentioned, Brighteon. There's Gab. That's sort of a kind of an alternative to Twitter. And then there's, of course, there's plenty of video, Rumble now, and then BitChute. So, it took a while because because the mainstream social media companies just had a monopoly on everything, right? So, I mean, now it's just taking some time for really right. Patriots to collect themselves and put together platforms, and we're doing it now. But man, I tell you,
I guess I have another confession. I actually am anti-Nike, and I actually wore one of my this shirt is 10 years old. and I just grabbed it. I should have grabbed my CSPOA shirt, but anyway, I grabbed this. But I do apologize. I don't buy anything Nike anymore either.
No, I don't either, but I do have some leftover Nike stuff from
That's what this
years
is.
and stuff like that I can be seen worn. A sweatshirt in particular. It's a University
This
of
is
Michigan
actually
sweatshirt.
a Milwaukee
Oh yeah,
Brewers
Milwaukee
shirt. You can
Brewers.
barely see the M here, but I actually got this shirt when I was in Milwaukee, and Sheriff Clark and I went to a Brewers baseball game together with his wife, and so I do have fond memories of where the shirt came from, but I don't appreciate the model or make.
You know what that reminds me? Every time I think of Milwaukee Brewers, I think of that guy that used to sit out in the center field. Was it Bob Euchre? He used to sit out. He used to do those commercials where he said, "I should have been in the front row" or something like that. For remember those commercials? But I always think of the Milwaukee Brewers when I think of that.
Bob
Long
Euchre,
time
he was
ago.
great.
Long time ago. Well, Sheriff, it's great to joke about things and it's great to reminisce. Sadly, we can't do that much these days because we're obviously in the fight for our life here in this country. We're seeing an attempted communist takeover occurring literally in real time. And it seems to me that the current administration that's in place, the phony administration, is part of the communist takeover. Sheriff, am I being too is that too out of bounds?
I think you're being way too mild with your adjectives. This dictatorship currently in Washington, D.C., and the pandemic that we actually have, which is very vivid, is the pandemic of utter corruption in Washington, D.C. And I point that finger at both the Democrats and the Republicans. The Rhino Republicans, in fact, you can't say Rhino Republican anymore because the mainstream Republicans are all anti-American, anti-Constitution, pro-IRS, pro-government intervention, pro-regulation, pro-spending, and I don't need to go any further than two things, than to put blame at the feet of both parties. Two things. One, neither Democrat or Republican have done a damn thing to get the IRS off the backs of the American people and to bring to justice those within the IRS who have committed numerous crimes against the American people. Not only do they not bring in investigations and bring these people to justice, they won't do anything about simplifying the tax code. And without a simplified tax code, the IRS gets to run amok, run without any reins whatsoever, no oversight. And about every 10 or 15 years, they'll have a little dog and pony show in Congress in one of the committees, the finance committee or whatever they have, and they'll shake their finger at the IRS and tell them to be more user friendly, and they go right back to the abusive oppression and victimization of the American people. So that's one. The other one that shows a complete disdain that the Republicans have for propriety and our Constitution and for life is that when they had the chance to defund Planned Parenthood, an evil private organization where the Republicans and Democrats both have funneled illegally American taxpayer dollars to support a private organization that murders 500,000 babies a year.
60 million so far. 60 million so far.
Yeah. So in the last 45 years, about 60 million. So it's absolutely absurd what we, the American people, have put up with, and these heroes of ours in Washington, D.C. that parade around and do nothing except an all-star wrestling match between the Democrats and Republicans, and it provides nothing but deficit spending, more corruption, and anti-American sentiment, and more division between all of us,
and more bondage, and more bondage for all of us. Now, you mentioned the media, Sheriff. This is something important. It just reminded me. You just saw recently, just reported the last day or two, I think the Blaze originally reported it, and Emerald Robinson was one of the ones that really brought it out. Apparently, well, not apparently, they did FOIA requests, and they found out that CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, Newsmax all took money from the federal government to push the vaccine. I likened it a couple of days ago on my show. You have to look at the news now as nothing more than an infomercial, because that's what you see, those infomercials that come on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. All they're doing is they're pushing a product. They're pushing a product. That's not, mainstream media has turned into an infomercial now, because they're obviously getting paid to promote private. Remember, Pfizer and these drug companies are private companies still. They're being paid to promote private products on a news broadcast
with government dollars.
With government dollars, they're nothing more, I think, than infomercials. Any comment on that, Sheriff?
I think that's a great analysis, and I think that's spot on. And again, it goes back to what I was starting with: a pandemic of utter corruption in Washington, D.C. Is it more than obvious yet to the taxpayers that Democrats and Republicans could not care less about how they spend your money and how frivolous they are with your money? And what can you absolutely, every American, what can you absolutely be guaranteed of every year without fail? That the government in Washington, D.C. will get bigger and cost more every single year. Show me the year where Congress said we're going to spend less this year. I want to see that one.
I thought you were going to say that every year they re-signed the Defense Authorization Act, which keeps the Patriot Act going, but which is another travesty. Which, as you know,
which was, again, a brainchild of the Republicans.
That's right. That's what people don't understand that. And they had this thing, come on, where they had this document all ready to go in 2 or 3 weeks. They had this plan for who knows how long.
And another example that there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. And I guess if I had to choose, normally I would want a Republican over a Democrat, because Republicans offer slower socialism than the Democrats. That would be my only choice there. But the the Republicans continuously side with the Democrats and then act like not. But one stark example of two different presidents that were the same party, and that would be George Bush, George W., and Barack Obama. They were the exact same president. They did the exact same things, one a little bit more than the other, but what does that matter? But they were the exact same president, and this farce that was actually the brainchild of what's the guy, the commentator on Fox, and he always shows his little
Hannity.
Chalkboard. No,
Mark Levine. Mark Levin.
No, bald, and he's from Texas, and he was Bush's right hand man.
Oh, Karl Rove.
Yeah, Karl Rove. Yes, and they came up with this brainchild called compassionate conservatism, and that means we're conservative and we're Republican and we're constitutional, but we're going to be compassionate about that, which means we're going to increase social programs and social spending and helping all these welfare programs proliferate and make more welfare programs. And yes, none of that is authorized by the Constitution. And we don't care, because that's going to get us elected. And this great election campaign slogan of compassionate conservatism is a farce and another way just to be more like Democrats.
Well, we got a break coming up, but yeah, they and then they hijacked the conservative right. The difference between Republican Democrats are: do you want to drive your car off the cliff into the abyss going 60 miles an hour, or do you want to do it going 40 miles an hour? Because it still ends up the same place in the long run. CSPOA.org. That's CSPOA.org to find out about Sheriff Mack's organization, and criticaldisclosure.com at northwestlibertynews.com. I'm your host, James White. We'll be back after these brief messages with Sheriff Richard Mack. Today's broadcast is sponsored by Heaven's Harvest Emergency Survival Food. Folks, as you can probably tell from watching the news, there's about to be a real big food shortage in this country. The trucker strike all across the world, especially here in the United States and Canada, is going to stop the food from flowing in here. There's no better time than right now to plant a garden for this spring. Spring is just around the corner, And you can save on shipping over at heavensharvest.com by going to heavensharvest.com and typing in Jim at checkout. Now, all you need to do is buy an heirloom seed vegetable kit or any food bucket and type in Jim at checkout, and you'll receive free shipping. Folks, don't wait. There's not much time left before the food supply is literally going to be shut down. We see this on the news every day. It's time to take your food security in your own hands. Do that by going to heavensharvest.com, picking up an heirloom vegetable seed kit, type in Jim at checkout. heavensharvest.com.
7K Metals is legacy. They help you leave a legacy for your family. Reasonable and affordable. Anyone can own gold and silver. It creates great generational wealth and residual passive income. No minimum or maximum order. 7K Metals has a Better Business Bureau A+ rating. It's about leaving a legacy for your family. It's about helping people. Now is the time to find out more information about protecting yourself. Call Carla at 406-855-2761. That's 406-855-2761. Today is a great time to buy gold and silver as a hedge against poor government decisions and potential economic collapse if history repeats itself. Take control of your financial future. Call Carla at 406-855-2761. 406-855-2761. Call now. 7K Metals and ask about your legacy.
PatriotPrepared.com carries the leading brands of storable food from Legacy and Heaven's Harvest. Patriot Prepared. Our name says it all. We're dedicated to empowering you to be self-reliant and confident in any circumstance. Whether you want to be prepared in the event of an emergency or you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, PatriotPrepared.com has prepackaged meals and kits for your entire family. Legacy, Heaven's Harvest are known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. Simple to prepare, easy to store, gluten-free and organic high-quality nutrition options with a 25-year shelf life. You can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. So go to PatriotPrepared.com right now to pick up your supply of high-quality storable food for your family, because it makes good sense to be prepared. That's PatriotPrepared.com.
Okay, thanks for hanging out at the break. I'm your host, James White. This is Critical Disclosure Radio. We come to you live every weekday, 10 to 11 Mountain Standard Time, AM, of course, on Brighteon Radio. We're on Rumble, also on Facebook. We're on Podbean and Twitch TV as well. So we do appreciate you looking in on any one of those platforms and supporting the broadcast. If you do want to support the show, you can go to libertylinks.io/Jim's Links. That's libertylinks.io/Jim's Links, and that has links to all of the social media sites and whatnot there. Okay, we got that out of the way. We're glad to have Sheriff Richard Mack here on the broadcast with us, the founder and director of the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. And I have to say, Sheriff, speaking of the CSPOA, man, you're really growing. I'm just on your website, and I'll bring that up in a minute. Your website is really looking snazzy. I think when we first started, I've known you for years now. I don't know. I'm probably at Bundy Ranch, 6, 7, 8 years. I don't know how long it's been. But your website has certainly improved over that time, and it's looking snazzy now, and you're growing, and more people are finding out about you. And I know you got speaking engagements, and you're traveling all the time and speaking in front of groups. Talk, if you can, about that, Sheriff. I mean, I know, it was an idea, a constitutionally founded idea that you had, when you started CSPOA, and now you're really kind of growing and getting into the mainstream. Tell us a little bit, if you can, about that.
Well, I will. Thanks. We just did a review webinar of all of our activities in 2021, and I was amazed. I had no idea that the CSPOA and I did so many events. Get this, Jim. I did 72 public presentations. One of them, of course, as you mentioned, Kalispell.
72.
And I did 72 last year. And that has nothing to say about how many shows I did like this. Okay, I did podcasts, webinars, TV interviews, and radio interviews to the tune of 6 to 8 per week. So if you took the totality of all of that, It's mind-boggling that I was 68 last year. I just turned 69, and I hope to retire sometime. Maybe when I'm 82. I don't know. I really do want to retire. I want to slow down, but I don't want to slow down this movement. And as long as there's something I can do to help save America, then we're going to keep doing that. And that's exactly what the CSPOA is all about. CSPOA.org. What I want to appeal to your listeners and to all the Brighteon and audience and to Jim's shows, wherever they are, no matter what network they're on, I want to appeal to you this for this. You can join us. It doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. We're not just out after law enforcement or sheriff memberships. Every citizen can be part of the solution, and the CSPOA offers, and I haven't seen any other, Jim. I have never seen any other. And believe me, I love the work that Mike Adams is doing, and Jim, you, and many other people that put out the truth. We cannot be involved in the freedom movement without recognizing who our enemy is, and without the proper information. I love Gun Owners of America. There's lots of different great groups out there. However, as far as proffering and offering a legitimate, peaceful, and effective solution to take back America, to restore our Constitution, I believe that the CSPOA is the only game in town. I know there's a lot of other people that want to have a solution, but some of those things, like I'll give you, for instance, common law grand juries. Okay, this is people or an association, depending on what you're looking at, who believe they can form their own grand jury of just people, whoever, random people they pick, or part of their club. They can try a public official or someone else, whoever they pick to be one of their criminals, and then that jury will issue a writ or an indictment against them, and then they have intercontinental marshals that will supposedly serve this warrant or writ or indictment against an individual, and then that's where it all stops. Well, first, intercontinental marshals are not by, for, and of the people. Again, the grand jury, or this common law grand jury, is not by, for, and of the people. 0.002% of the people even know that they exist. So it is not a foundational constitutional principle. It is not allowed like this, and it ends at that point because they have no prosecutor. Nobody will prosecute it. The sheriff will not serve these papers, and it ends. And yet people are putting a lot of time and money into that solution when we have a legitimate, not pie in the sky, made up stuff, but we have a legitimate, provable, we have evidence that this is working. And yes, it's not working enough. And that's why we are really kicking off 2022 with a huge conference, a convention, national convention, which we've had every year. In fact, the one we had a year ago in Texas was fantastic. And because it was in Texas, a lot of sheriffs in Texas are on fire with this, and we're going back to Texas again. We've been to Texas about 5 times last year, and Texas sheriffs who went to the convention or heard about the convention now want to have CSPOA training seminars in their counties. I will tell you what the sheriff said in their review of this class and convention. It was the best police training I've ever received in my life. Most of them were comments like that. And so what do we need to do to make this happen, to make this work? We've got to make this bigger, better, and faster. So we're planning a convention in Vegas on September 30th and October 1st that will bring 500 to 700 sheriffs together to develop a plan of action to take back America. And that is exactly what we are going to do.
You know, Sheriff, I produce a show here with Kirk McKenzie. I think you probably know Kirk from he started the Constitutional County here in the Flathead Valley and is making some great headway with that. And that is sort of the constitutional sheriff is one of the key components in his program, is having a constitutional sheriff, because just like you stated, and I think, overall, Sheriff, I think we're seeing now the thing that frustrates me and frustrates people that I talk to and people that are in my listening audience. We sort of know, and we're kind of going to shift gears a little bit, kind of stay in the same theme, the law enforcement part. We know that the crimes have been committed. We've had enough evidence. We've had enough congressional committees. There's been enough, Durham has put out, reports about these people. I mean, the evidence is out there that they're crooks. We know this. The problem is, Sheriff, is there's no law enforcement end. The part of the justice system, the final part where you apprehend the criminals and put them before, give them due process and then put them in jail if they're found guilty. That's like gone. That doesn't exist anymore. We got to get that back, or all the teaching you do, all the radio shows that I do, all the conferences that we have that you can have across the country. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I think you would agree. If we don't have the side that actually puts criminals behind bars and carries out the final stage of law enforcement, all the stuff that we're doing is meaningless because no one's going to enforce the law.
Amen to that. And that's exactly where we're going with our sheriffs. We actually have two sheriffs now that have conducted investigations on the voter fraud of 2020. Sheriff Schmaling in Racine County, Wisconsin, actually turned his investigation over to the AG. And then that's another politician instead of a prosecutor who refuses to do his job. And you know what he told the sheriff? I don't even believe he saw and reviewed the information submitted in the investigation. He simply told the sheriff, a nice publicity stunt, Sheriff, nice publicity stunt. And instead of doing his job, it stopped there. So we're still battling the pandemic of corruption within the states and across Washington, D.C. But we're going to have a lot more sheriffs conduct these investigations. And we're going to now depend on the American people to elect prosecutors, county attorneys, DAs, and state AGs that will do exactly what you said, and that is abide by the rule of law and get these people prosecuted.
You see, and I gotta say, these globalists, these establishment people, I mean, they're evil geniuses. Soros thought of this ahead of time, and I think he's got 450 county prosecutors that he paid for, pretty much got in office and helped support to get in office and fund across the country.
A few sheriffs too.
Yeah. So even if you have a constitutional sheriff in your county and they see these crimes and they apprehend these crooks, if the prosecutor doesn't prosecute them or lets them go, you see them letting these hardened criminals go across the country, just letting them out, accused of a murder and robbery, we'll let them out in 24 hours and they're, next thing you know, they go out and they murder again. I mean, if you got the corrupt prosecutors, it's a systemic issue, Sheriff. The system is corrupted, man. I mean, you can get all good people in there, and if you don't change the system, they'll be corrupt before long too. I hate to have a dim outlook on things, but I've been saying for a long time, the system.
We're going to tell the truth on your show, and that's what we do, Brighteon, and we tell the truth. And yes, again, utter corruption is at its zenith right now. For instance, Comey got on national television against Hillary Clinton. Durham has issued a lot more evidence than just on Hillary, but Comey, the AG of the United States, details all the elements of the crimes that she committed, and he detailed about 5 or 6 different felonies and crimes that she committed, showed the exact evidence that she committed every single one of them, and then he says, but no one's going to prosecute. Look at that. So why did he waste his time with this investigation? Why did he waste his time with an international press conference to say she committed them and that the evidence is clear, and then he gets to make the decision? Turn it over to a prosecutor and let the prosecutor handle it from there.
It's theater,
but he refused.
It's theater. It's all theater. It's a con job. We're all the marks. We're all marks of a big con. Sheriff, we got a network break coming up here in 30 seconds, and we got to take that. Again, folks, CSPOA.org, CSPOA.org, and you don't have to be a former sheriff or law enforcement officer or peace officer to join.
Join the posse. It's a CSPOA posse. It's a citizens group. that can get involved, and we do weekly training with you to make sure that you're helping get rid of the corruption in your county.
So if you always want to be part of a posse, folks, that's the way. That's where to go. CSPOA. Sheriff, we just have to take a quick break. We'll be back after these brief messages here. I'm your host, James White, criticaldisclosureradio.com. Three minutes. Okay, thanks for hanging out for the break, folks. I'm your host, James White. This is Critical Disclosure Radio, criticaldisclosure.com, northwestlibertynews.com, and we got Sheriff Mack's got his good shirt on now. Now we can go on for the second part of the show. Good call there, Sheriff. You did a wardrobe change during the break. That's what you did.
I was just too ashamed.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
We'll put the true logo out there.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
Save America logo.
Folks, thanks for hanging out for the break here. I'm your host, James White, and I'm with Sheriff Mack, the one and only constitutional Sheriff Richard Mack, founder and director of CSPOA, a longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of the show, been on the broadcast many times. I think, Sheriff, last year, you were probably on 3 or 4 times, so I think I took up a small percentage of those radio interviews that you did last year. It was always great to have you on. I know we did that one interview with Sheriff Slaughter, and he's still going strong around here. I'll tell you, his program where he sends his deputies out to the sort of the far reaches of the county where there's not a lot of population, and has them teach the Constitution, in their police uniform. That's great, and he gives them extra credit if they do the training from can't remember the name of that the place where they do I'm drawing a blank. It's a college. Anyway, he's doing some great job. He's a great example here in Montana of a constitutional sheriff. And we need to have those all across the country. I mean, they need to, to go to your training if you're a sheriff out there. And where can they find out?
Another thing I think that will happen, maybe just through osmosis, and that is if we get enough constitutional sheriffs, their influence will create constitutional county attorneys. This movement to return to the Constitution, I believe, will have an effect on the prosecutors also across the country. The sheriff can have a huge influence, although he doesn't work for the county attorney, and the county attorney doesn't work for him. And we've got several times where we've had to play that card. We would invite the county attorneys across this country to attend our seminars and return to the basic fundamental principles of American liberty and the rule of law. And so we hope that will happen. But there's a lot the constitutional sheriff can do with or without his county attorney. And Sheriff Brad Rogers, when he was sheriff, he now is a county commissioner himself. We hope that he'll run for governor because he wins everything he runs for. And he's a staunch constitutionalist. He was a staunch constitutional sheriff. Now he's a constitutional county commissioner, and he helped declare Elkhart County a constitutional county. And he set the example, because about 11 years ago, 12 years ago, when he was sheriff, he actually had a confrontation with the FDA as they were harassing David Hostetler, an Amish farmer in his county. And of course, so the FDA found this guy wasn't pasteurizing his milk, and he's a drug dealer, a druggy milk dealer, because he wouldn't pasteurize his milk. And they went in and did spot inspections on this guy over and over and over and over. Finally, he got tired of it. And they even took his milk to an FBI lab to analyze it to see if it was safe, and he passed every inspection. And they still wanted to take him before a grand jury in Detroit, and how's he going to get there, another state. But anyway, Sheriff Rogers called me on it. The Amish farmer called me on it. We started working out a plan, and Rogers finally just told the FDA, if you come into my county again without due process, without probable cause, and duly signed warrants, I will arrest you for trespass. He told them he would arrest them. If they're violating the Constitution, they're violating the supreme law of the land, and therefore are committing a crime. That's what we need more sheriffs to grasp onto and understand. When somebody violates the Constitution, you don't get to go, well, that's really a sad thing. I wish they would behave, or refer the victim to a good attorney, or maybe your brother-in-law down on Main Street who's an attorney. The sheriffs in this country are not attorney referral services. We are the justice of the county. And when we see an injustice, we should do everything within our power to stop it. And so Rogers threatened them. They in turn threatened to arrest him for felony obstruction of justice. And then finally, we kind of caught them in their lies and whatnot. We devised one more letter and sent it back to them. And all of this was done by emails and maybe a couple of phone calls. There was no personal contact ever. And at the end of this whole thing, Rogers won. The FDA left his county and have not been back in 12 years. So if we get the sheriffs on board, and in that if particular interest, the U.S. Marshals or the attorney from the FDA said, well, can I talk to your county attorney? I want to talk to your county attorney. He says, the county attorney has nothing to do with this. I run the sheriff's office, not the county attorney. You'll talk with me. Okay. And see, that's really where the pig bites the apple in this whole thing, because the sheriff has a huge amount of power. And if he uses it the right way, we can take America back county by county, one good sheriff at a time.
And you make a great point. And Sheriff, one of the things I think that we have that has to go hand in hand with that, you're very familiar with the oath of office. I mean, everyone that serves has to take the oath, even down to the dog catcher. So many people take their oath and then they violate their oath, but there seems to be no no penalty for violating your oath. And my thought is, just from a layman, what's the use of having someone stand up and go through the exercise and pretend that they're taking an oath when no one follows the oath? It's like theater again. It's more theater. It's like, why even do it? Go ahead.
We say the exact same thing. In fact, our kind of our sub motto on all of this is simply this: we can take America back if the sheriff and his officers and chiefs of police, but mostly the sheriffs, because they're elected, they're independent, they answer to the people. The chief of police answers to a committee or a council or the town manager. If they will just do one thing, the sheriff only has to do one thing. This is so simple. It's not easily implemented, but it's so simple. And we've got to overcome what you just said. And that is the sheriff, and we train the sheriffs to know and understand the significance of the oath of office. And we train him to keep his word and to keep his oath, because that's how we take America back. And if they find out what their role is in preserving the American Republic and what the law enforcement and sheriff role in preserving the American Republic, then they start to catch on. And that's the training. No one can do this without being trained. You've got to be educated, and that's where the CSPOA comes in.
Sheriff, are you a little bit disappointed, as I am, and not looking to throw anybody on the bus, but the January 6th incident that occurred, that apparently, quote unquote, the insurrection, as it's now famously known and will go down in history is known as the insurrection. I'm disappointed in a couple things. I'm disappointed that Donald Trump didn't help out more. Didn't seem like he should have went to bat more for these folks. And I interviewed Stewart Rhodes the day before he got arrested. I know that Stewart. You've been on. I don't know what your relationship is with him now. It's not important, but they seem to be targeting. They seem to be targeting conservatives. They're targeting them. If you saw the caption here I saw earlier, where the guy that put his feet up on Nancy Pelosi's desk are looking at giving him 7 or 8 years in prison, and other people that were in the same area as him get 30 days probation, and he's a strong conservative, so they're really going after him. How do you reverse, or how do you overcome when the people that are in power and have all the big guns and they have all the power of the crooked FBI behind them, when they're targeting conservatives? It's a hard road to hoe, and you said it's not easy. It's not going to be easy. And I think that's what I think there's a chilling effect. I think the feds intimidate the local sheriffs, and they sort of have a grip on things right now. How do we break that grip and overcome that tyranny, Sheriff? That seems to be the challenge that we're in today. Well,
Sean Hannity, I totally disagree with him on one issue. He says that the rank and file of the FBI are good people, and it's the upper echelon of the FBI that are corrupt. Well, the rank and file of the FBI have proven, especially pursuant to January 6th, that they will follow any orders that they're given.
That's right.
That they will act like thugs. They will act like Nazis as long as they're ordered to do so. And they simply give the same excuse as they did in Nuremberg. And that is, I was just following orders, so I can't be held accountable for any of the stupid crimes that I committed, the murder, the genocide, whatever. All we have in the FBI and federal agencies, 99%, a bunch of Nuremberg officers who will follow all orders and do what they're told. As long as they can keep their salary and keep their big retirements, that they'll do it. And it's obvious that they are doing it, and they are targeting conservatives and Christians and constitutionalists. And I am really grateful that I did not go to January 6th. I took a lot of heat from people and criticism because I refused to go. And I told everybody not to go. And I didn't think it was a good idea. And one of the reasons why I said, if Trump was going to do something about this election that he claimed was a fraud, if he believed that it was a fraud, then he should have declared it to be so, and declared the election to be null and void, and to stay and to create an investigation so where people could see the evidence. But he wanted Pence to do something. He wanted other people to do something, wanted the Supreme Court to do something. And why didn't he do it? And so I think Trump would, when you analyze presidents of the United States, I think Trump was probably the best or one of the best we've had in 100 years. I've gone through all the other presidents. I haven't done a thorough examination of it, but he was probably the best sheriff in the last, best president in the last 100 years, maybe in all of history of America. But he said something. He promised us that he was going to drain the swamp in Washington, D.C. He did not do that. It drained him. And Mr. President, Mr. Trump, you cannot drain the swamp if you keep picking swamp dwellers to be in your cabinet.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what he did.
That's right.
And he had the chance to pick Sheriff Clark to be in his cabinet, and he didn't. Somebody who's clearly outside the swamp, and he didn't pick him, even though he was interviewed. And he could have picked him for all sorts of things. Why do you keep picking people from the FBI to run the FBI when they're so damn corrupt? And why do you pick an AG? I mean, look at Trump's pick of AGs. He could not pick a solid constitutional AG to save his life. And yet he just went from the fry pan to the fire with a lot of his choices, but especially AG. And it didn't work out. And he did not drain the swamp. It drained him.
Well, I think it just illustrates, what guys like you and I have known for a long time. The president of the United States is not really the most powerful man in the world. They're claimed that he's the most powerful man in the world.
Right.
They've all been bought and paid for a long time. I was very disappointed when Trump came out and said, and I'm not here to bash Trump, we were on the subject, but when he said, hey, we'll just confiscate the guns and we'll worry about the due process after, he made a comment like that early on, if you remember that, early on in his presidency. I think he ended up talking to Wayne LaPerriere. I had a meeting with him, and he kind of, said, hey, you can't be talking like that. What are you doing? You can't say this. So he kind of backtracked, I think, a little bit from that. But, here's the thing, Sheriff. It's not Trump. It's not, it's not Ted Cruz. It's not Rubio. It's the people. It's always been in the hands of the folks. It will always be this Hollywood sort of fantasy that we've been conditioned to believe that somebody's going to ride in and save the day and ride off into the sunset with the girl. That's all that is. That's a Hollywood fantasy. It's the person looking in the mirror. That's the person that has to act. Don't wait for headquarters. Trump's not going to call you and tell you to be active. Your local congressperson is not going to call you. Consider this a call to action. Myself, Sheriff Mack, and he's been doing it for years. Folks, this is our country is in greater peril than it's ever been since I've been alive. And I'm not being trying to, it's not hyperbole. We all have to act, and you can do something, even if it's being a bad example, right, Sheriff? Even if you do something and fail, at least you've shown that it doesn't work, and other people aren't going to waste their time doing it because now you've proven it to be, a failure. I mean, you can do something even if you fail. You're helping things. Have any comment on that?
Yeah, I do. I think that's back to what I said earlier. Find something that's working. We've already got proof at the CSPOA that what we're doing is working. We just need to make this bigger, better, and faster, and you can help us do that. Okay? We're all about peaceful restoration. This doesn't need to be a revolution. In fact, I'll go a step further, Jim. In your comment about the precarious position that America finds itself in, I think this is the worst America has been since the Civil War. So we're talking 160, 170 years. This is the worst time in American history since the Civil War. We're losing our freedoms, and everybody's saying good because government's taking care of us, and that's what they're supposed to do. And in the name of taking care of us, we have literally given up our civil rights and our individual liberty. Our Constitution is hanging by a thread, and the people who are destroying it are being held up as heroes. And this complete socialistic, communistic takeover and destruction of America is happening, just as Nikita Khrushchev, president or prime minister of Russia, warned us that America would wake up in the middle of socialism one day and embrace it, and they won't have to fire a shot. And that actually happened. And the descendant of all of that is now Putin, who took the same reins that Nikita Khrushchev was. And when I was a boy, Nikita Khrushchev really scared me. He was fat and ugly and mean looking and bald and just, wow, what a dictator. And now we have dictators all over Washington, D.C., all over our state capitals, and all in the name of taking care of us, they destroy everything that made America great in the first place. So I'm scared. Some say, "Oh, I'm not scared. I believe in Jesus, and Jesus will save us." No, yes, Jesus will. But what's going on is horrific, and yes, it's scary. And I am scared for my children. I'm not scared for me anymore. Look, I'll be 70 this year. I've had a great life, but I really worry about my children and my grandchildren. I am scared of what this government will do to them. They've proven that they do not care about the rule of law or about the proper role of government or our Constitution or its enforcement. Our Constitution is all but gone, and we have got to get it back. Without that foundation, the rest of America will crumble.
No, indeed. And, it's funny, it kind of circling back to what you had just said here a couple of minutes ago when you started. I played a tape yesterday, a video from Aldous Huxley. I think it's back in 1962, who was a super globalist, super New World Order guy who actually wrote the Brave New World. And he says in his speech, I want to say this was at Berkeley, he said, the elite are going to put the population into a position where they're going to love their servitude. They're going to love their servitude. Sheriff, I don't know if he's wrong. I think that they've almost fully achieved a lot of the stuff that they've tried to do in Brave New World. And there's only a small handful of us that, are not under the spell. These people are like wizards or like magicians or warlocks. There's only a few of us that are not under their spell, relatively speaking. It's a growing number. But I don't know, Sheriff. I see the degradation of society and the moral decay that is all around us. And I wonder if this nation isn't due for some correction,
It's due.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hope we can do it peacefully, but
Yeah.
I wonder about that. But I'm going to tell you, you just alluded to this about the slavery that is in America today. If you took the vaccination, not did you take the vaccination, if you took the vaccination without checking the science behind it and checking both sides and the dangers and what's really in the vaccination, and you're putting this stuff into your body just because government or maybe even a church leader told you to, or whatever, if you just did that blindly because Fauci told you to, or Biden told you to, or Trump told you to, that's another complaint I have about Trump. He told people to get vaccinated. If you took that vaccination and you had your children take that vaccination and you did not check what's in that and check both sides, like with the frontline doctors, and see what's really on both sides of that issue, if you wear a mask on your face or a diaper on your face, if you shut down your businesses or shut down your churches, if you did all of that because government told you to, you're a slave. You're a pathetic slave. And Thomas Paine warned us that if government can tell us and force us to do anything they want with their capricious nature and all their whims, if you follow government, no matter what, you are a slave. And Thomas Paine said the Declaratory Act was the same thing that we're doing today. We've come full circle, that government can do and regulate us however they want. And when that happens, when government can do that, that is slavery. And any of you going along with that are slaves, including a lot of the major churches in this country.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. The pulpit has failed. The pulpit has failed miserably. There's no doubt about that. Sheriff, we only have about 2 minutes left. I can't believe it. Things went by so fast here on the broadcast. CSPOA.org. CSPOA.org. What can people do? What's the first thing they should do, Sheriff, when they go to CSPOA? How can they get involved right away and have a good, some resources available to them even by the end of the day today? What can they do?
Well, one of the best resources we have is a little booklet that I put together. I beat the federal government. As you very well know, that's my calling card. That's the only reason you and I know each other, is when I was sheriff, I sued the federal government, took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won. Totally miraculous. I never anticipated any of that would happen, but we won. And Sheriff Prince went with me to the Supreme Court right there from Ravalli County, Montana. This is the most amazing credibility for any of us. Read that decision and pass that around and use that as a springboard to talk to your sheriffs and get them involved. Join our posse. It's very inexpensive, and you're making us bigger, better, and more powerful, and you're getting our message out there. We need you involved in the holy cause of liberty. That's what this is. We're doing it all together. I can't do it alone. Please join the CSPOA posse at cspoa.org. Become a part of the solution. Let's take America back, county by county, one good sheriff working with his people at a time.
Well said, Sheriff. And you can see, folks, those of you on the video, you can see right there underneath the sheriff's name there, CSPOA.org. CSPOA.org. It stands for Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association. Sheriff Richard Mack, thanks so much for joining us here today. We are just out of time. We do appreciate you coming here. I'm sure we'll have you on here again another couple, 2 or 3 times this year. Folks, you can support this broadcast by going to criticaldisclosure.com, northwestlibertynews.com, or libertylinks.io /Jim's Linked. For my guest, Richard Mack, this is James White, saying bye now.